this network of commerce where we exchange labor and money and we transact. We've got to have a better conversation where we recognize that the person on the other end is a human.
Yes.
Wow.
Welcome to Defying the Odds podcast, the podcast where grit, resilience, and drive take center stage. I am Leonovsky, political refugee from the Soviet Union, and now professor of entrepreneurship.
I'm Victor Salcida, a formerly incarcerated individual turned software engineer and social entrepreneur on a mission to empower justice-impacted individuals through technology, education, and systemic change.
In 2018, I was fortunate to have Victor as one of my students while he was incarcerated. Fast forward, we're both free to find opportunities, challenge stereotypes as business partners, community leaders, and co-anchors of this life-changing podcast, where we dive deep into powerful conversations with guests who have shattered their own barriers and defied their own odds.
On each episode, we're here to bring you not just stories, but strategies, real tools to help you take on challenges in life, business, and beyond.
So tune in, be inspired, and get ready to defy your own odds.
This is Defying the Odds podcast, where no challenge is too great to conquer.
Let's go.
All right. Victor, how you doing today?
Hey man, as you can see, I'm looking as fly as ever. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday to you. So, we have a really excellent guest with us on our podcast today, Anna Rathbun, and I'm super excited for all of you to actually meet her. But before we do, Victor, I got a question for you. How have you defied the odds since the last time we met?
Of course, Leo. Excited about meeting Anne and going into more detail with her. But this is the first time I've worn sunglasses on this episode. And if y'all have been following me on LinkedIn, I have had LASIK surgery. Just had it last night, and that's going to be my Defy the Odds story. I grew up with glasses ever since like junior high, I believe. I remember playing basketball and not being able to actually see the basket. I just kind of knew where the direction of it was, but I was making them all the time. But for some reason, when I actually did get the glasses, I was able to see the hoop. But for some reason, it kind of threw my shot off. I think it was just like muscle memory, and now I had this vision thing that I had to play with. So anyhow, I went on to using contacts, used those for many years. I just ended up making the decision because I just ended up like sleeping in my contacts, not taking them out, and I knew that it was just bad for my eyes, and over time it wasn't going to be good. So just one of the challenges that I was battling with, and thought, long term, it was going to be an investment that was going to be worthwhile. So I took advantage of it. It was a really fast process. I think it took 15 minutes altogether for the actual procedure. Still in the recovery process. Like I said, it just happened last night, but I defied the odds and got me some new eyes. How about you, Leo?
Well, I'm going to go with the fact that since the last time I saw you, I defied the odds by going in and asking Anna to come to our podcast. One of the things that I always pride myself on is stepping up, and when I see someone of excellence, that I actually step up and, first of all, let them know, and second of all, try to engage and learn from them. So I'm going to talk about Anna, and that kind of brings us to bringing Anna into the conversation. So let me do that. Hey, Anna.
Hello.
Hey, Anna.
All right. I just want to introduce you to those of you who don't know her. Anna Rathbun brings a rare and dynamic perspective to finance. I first met her just a few weeks ago when she spoke at a CBIZ event. And one of the things that I found interesting is that she blends economic with her background in music. And born in South Korea, 2000 Southern Baptist missionaries. I'd love to hear about that. She immigrated to U.S. at the age of 9, something that I relate to, and later earned economics degree from Harvard University. While working in investment, she pursued her passion for music, earning a master's in music, an artist diploma, and a doctor of musical arts with a dissertation on childhood irony in Mahler's Fourth Symphony. That is going to be interesting. I'm going to definitely put Mahler's Symphony into the edits. She later taught as a professor of voice at Central Cleveland Institute of Music. And today, Anna is a chief investment officer at CBIZ, leading a team of managing billions of dollars in investment. But also, she's a sought-after global leader, and she's praised for making complex economic data clear and engaging. I was firsthand. I knew that when I saw her, I realized that I needed to have her on this podcast. So in this episode, I know she will share how she defied the odds and how she forged her career that merges two seemingly disparate passions, finance and music. And hopefully you can offer us some insights into resilience, adaptability, and thriving, something that we desperately will need in this turbulent economy and going forward. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, just how we typically start off these conversations. I do want to ask you kind of how you define defying the odds in your own perspective.
Yeah, so I'm in investments and we tend to think in terms of probabilities. Like, what is the probability that there are going to be tariffs, or what is the probability that markets are going to have a correction? That's just how we think. So from that perspective, if I think about defying the odds, right? Odds are probabilities. Humans tend to look at, when they look at their life, I'm going to do what so-and-so did because it worked for them. So whatever we observe, whatever people have done, there's a higher probability of success because, the path is sort of obvious to them.
Right.
So if you do something that has potentially a less probability of success because less number of people have gone through them, but you still succeed at it, I look at that as defying the odds. So, for example, I thought I was going to fail at a lot of things, but I followed them because I was passionate about them, and I can talk more about what that is as we go. And there were moments where I just thought, okay, what am I doing? But I kept at it, and many years later, I look like I'm successful, but there were moments of despair. And, when you rise above and continue to strive, and you find what success means for you, not as the world defines it, I think that is defying the odds.
Oh, yeah, those are two different kind of perspectives. One's is just probability. I do like that because it is true. Like if there's an underdog that beats this team that we know is going to win, it's always a good story, and it's just like defying the odds in my eyes. So I would definitely agree with that one. Leo.
Yeah, I would just think that I love how you talked about. I love your vulnerability, and thank you for that. Because we talk about moments of despair, and moments of despair is something nobody wants to feel, but yet it is something that is absolutely critical on a journey, right? It's and as is failure. As
Yes.
is failure. So defying the odds, it doesn't mean not failing. It actually means failing more often, right? Very often. And that is not how our brain works. So I'll come back to that because I want to learn more about what your thoughts are about our human perception of the odds, because you've mentioned that in one of your presentations, since our brains are faulty at assessing odds, and we have a particular bias that's built into us, I think genetically, that really creates a lot of these problems that we are actually experiencing. And I really appreciate the fact that you've mentioned that we typically go and follow somebody else's example. And that goes back to like I always harp on this one thing, and that is mentors, 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 right? And I followed the person who inspired me the most, who happened to be in my radius. So did Victor. So did you. But we had no control over who that was.
That's right.
when we were growing up. So talk to us a little bit more about your background and your growing up, and how did you, how did you come up to this precipice of defying the odds? Like where did that really show up for you, where you had to be tested on this?
Yeah, so, not to go all the way back, but I was born in South Korea, in Seoul, and raised until I was 9 years old there. And, growing up there I guess I was born in 1978 and moved to the United States in 1987. It's not the Korea of today where you've got, a mega city full of amazing things. I mean, we are talking about before it became a full out democracy. So, I mean, I don't think people remember necessarily, but we had curfews at night. And, we were warned of, at any moment we could be invaded by North Korea. So as a child, I lived with the presence of the Cold War and the possibility of imminent war was definitely looming over me. And I remember that very, very vividly. And then, of course, our family moved to the United States when I was 9 years old. And, I mean, this is an amazing country. I mean, not only is it an amazing country in terms of safety from like an imminent war, but I mean, it really is, you can defy the odds in this country. I mean, you can do it anywhere, but this country makes it a little bit easier, I think. Coming here, growing up, I didn't know any English. I had to learn English. And growing up with Southern Baptist ministers as parents in Tampa, Florida, of all places. I think in my high school, I think I was the third Asian person in my entire high school. So
Okay, that says a lot.
yeah, the whole school. So, there was some immigrant woes, I'll put it that way. There were feelings of, okay, where do I belong? There are issues with, and I'm going to actually quote something. I wanted to quote this for you guys because, we talked about Mahler, right? Gustav Mahler, the composer. There's a quote in his journal. He wrote, "I am thrice homeless as a native of Bohemia of Austria, as an Austrian among Germans, and as a Jew throughout the world, everywhere an intruder, never welcomed." And that's how I felt. So when I actually was doing the dissertation on Mahler's Fourth Symphony, I read that quote and I was like, that's me. He's describing me. So it's very lonely. It was lonely growing up in Tampa, Florida, as a South Korean transplant. And so I studied really hard. It was the only way I could get away, going to math competitions and winning and things like that. Eventually took me to Harvard, studied economics, but that loneliness and whatever turmoil I was feeling, and certainly as a young person, I think everyone goes through this, transition period, and it can be a hard thing. I felt like a piece of me was dying. And I know that sounds so dramatic, but all singers are dramatic. I'm just warning you. And I felt the need to find my voice, literally. And that's when I started to sing. So I got my degree in economics, and I started working in Boston, and I thought, what do I want to do with my life? I've been bitten by this music bug. I feel the need to express myself in ways I can't express myself in my culture, and I feel like an intruder. And it was music. And what I did was I decided that I did not want to regret not having tried it on my deathbed. Many, many decades from then, I didn't want to die thinking, I should have done it. So I jumped ship and I applied to all these schools. And in preparing for auditions, I actually went back to work at Harvard. After graduating, I worked at a firm in Boston, but I left there. I went back to work at Harvard because it got me a library card. And so I was able to go borrow books and borrow music at the library. I could use the practice rooms to practice, and that was my goal of trying to get into music programs. And that brought me to Cleveland, Ohio. I attended Cleveland Institute of Music. And imagine being 25, not having a music degree, and you're in a master's program, and you're not even that good. But somebody heard some beautiful sound in you and knew that you could do it and knew that you were teachable. And that's how it started. And I worked very hard. And those were my moments of despair because all musicians, all artists have this, kind of a pendulum swing where there are moments of just ecstasy because the art is so amazing, and then there are moments of despair that I will never live up to it. That's sort of the life that you live. But you stay true to yourself because you're in it for a reason, because you appreciate the humanity in the art. Something has connected you through voice or a violin or piano, whatever it is. Something has connected to you to something bigger. And when you train, it's your job to try to find what that is and to find your voice in it. So, I mean, those are the odds of trying to become a musician when I don't really have a background. And I've got this mathematical mind. How do you let down your guard and become vulnerable enough to express yourself so that you can move other people's hearts?
It's so powerful.
Takes many, many years.
Well, that and that and this idea, what strikes me from what you're saying is that you had this trajectory of not being understood, not being heard, feeling like an outsider, both inside your own community and inside the larger American community, and then yet again thrice homeless inside your financial education community. I can only imagine. I think it would be pretty challenging, and it resonates with me being an immigrant from the Soviet Union, coming in at the age of 12. I was not the only Russian immigrant let me tell you, in my school. However, that was actually a negative, not the positive. I have a whole story about that. But the idea of figuring out what you want to do and shifting your identity to not to be somebody else's, story, right? Not your parents' story, not somebody else, but but your own. That pivot, you and I both know it's powerful. I'm wanting to hear about Victor. What do you think about it, especially because I know you have quite a story about that too. And what happened for you as you were hearing Anna?
I think the thing that stands out to me is just like the passion, right? Like what you're really passionate about is just like the music and your commitment to then like therefore like pursue it. You had a mindset that you're gonna kind of defy the odds and get into this program. Similar to like my coding background, I had to kind of show up to the class and defy the odds. I literally didn't have any coding experience going into the program or anything.
Gosh.
You didn't have computers or anything.
Yeah, we didn't.
That too.
Yeah, it was the first time for me touching a computer in a while, and just being able to have to go through that process and stand out from other candidates or participants and just go through that, whole process, and get out of prison, and not sure if I'm going to make a career out of it. But it was just something that I learned and I was passionate about, and I could, it definitely resonates with me, and I just I think that has a lot to do with it, and Dredd touched on it. It's just like what is your passion? What do you want to pursue? And you're gonna defy the odds to make that happen. So this is another example of that for sure.
That's great. Well, let's take a quick break so that we can share some more information about our plan for transforming this podcast and connecting to all of you. And then when we come back, we have a couple of more questions for Anna, and I can't wait. I can't wait to hear the answers. All right, let's check it out. Let's take a break. All right, and we're back. So we are here with Anna, and if you've been listening so far, you have heard some pretty interesting journey that she's taken all the way, taken her from South Korea all the way to Harvard, and then to Cleveland, and then to her career in finance. But before we go into the later years, Anna, I want to know about like any specific define the odds moments where you had a choice and where it was difficult, where it was really, really tough. And especially when you were talking, the one that really stood up to me is that you didn't want to live your life and not really pursue your love of music. And I just want to know about that moment when you either told your parents, those Korean Baptist ministers, or what else. I would love to learn more about that kind of the moments in this journey that really are pivotal to you defying the odds.
Yeah, it's interesting. When you're young, you have this incredible courage. And so, I didn't even think of the odds. I was just like, I have no choice. I have to do it because I'm so passionate, right? I'm going to find a way to do it. Determination, right? But you're correct. The big hurdle was the parents. And, my mother described it as, I sent my daughter to Harvard, studied economics, and, I feel like I built a tower and it just came crumbling down, right? And, for her, being immigrant parents, of course, there's pride, et cetera, completely understandable. But I knew in the back of my mind she was doing things that we all tell ourselves we shouldn't do, which is comparing ourselves to other people, right? And defining our lives based on the value measuring stick of the world rather than who we truly are, right? So they did come around ultimately, but it was not an easy process. It took a long time. It took my mother coming to an opera that I was singing, and I was a lead in, and she saw me and she was like, okay, I didn't know you were that good. But it took time for sure. The other defying the odds moments really were internal. And it was more of the despair I talked about earlier. Do I really have what it takes? And it was more about, can I make it? Meaning, will agents sign me on? Will people ask me to sing? Will I have a solo here? Again, necessary for a career, but measuring my value based on what others think, right? So it really, the ability to be able to say, it's okay if I fail. It's okay if I don't make that audition. It's okay if I get rejected from something. Artists go through so many rejections. We have to try it over and over and over again. That was, talk about odds. The odds are completely against you. But it's really that experience that can change who you are as an artist. That's what you're going for. So, you're constantly trying to defy the odds when you're an artist. And you have to battle despair or self-doubt all the time. But the job is to get back up and go to the
The
practice room
job,
again.
the job. Ooh, whew. Yeah, you know those moments, right? The job is to get back up, right?
Yep. I do like the, yeah, just how you put just the focus on not trying to compare yourself to, others. I think a lot of times that's what we get caught up in is, you see, especially with social media nowadays,
Yes.
is like trying to keep up with the Joneses, so to speak. And yeah, you can't let that get in the way of how you pursue, your dreams. Because if you worry about like all of that stuff, it's outside of your control, in my opinion. And I think that like you have to focus on what you can control, and that's you just showing up every day and pursuing how you want to pursue it. And yeah, that's powerful. But my next question for you, Anna, is just kind of the lessons from these opportunities that you had the opportunity to experience. What lessons do you want to share with our audience?
Um, you know, all of these things happened over a long period of time, right? So I know nobody asked, so I won't blame anybody, but I am in my mid 40s. So if I think about the trajectory of my career and how, it's kind of had twists and turns, it was difficult at the time, but after time has passed, it has become a beautiful thing, right? So the lesson is that when you're living whatever challenges there are, it may not make sense to you. You have to have a long-term view of your life.
Mm,
That there is a purpose for whatever suffering we have at that moment, whatever challenges we're encountering, and again, you need to get through it and be excited about what kind of person you will become after, behind that challenge. And over time, the collection of your experiences can become a beautiful mosaic. And I think that is a big lesson because I have the benefit of time having passed and being able to look back and see the beauty in it. Trust me, when I was going through it, I didn't always see the beauty in it. It was a lot of desperation, self-doubt, and of course, like high moments too. So perseverance and long-term view of one's life.
That is so powerful. One of the joys of doing this podcast is that we get a chance to interview different people of different walks of life, and then to hear really, really common themes really come through,
for sure.
but told in very different ways. It's so fascinating. And it is my sincere hope that as we develop ourselves as podcasters, because we're learning, we're on this journey of figuring things out as we go along, with moments of despair. They were included. They were included as well. What I learned from you, right? And then this idea, the thing that really stuck out for me, is your mentioning that it's a mosaic. It's not a picture. It's not a painting. It really is a mosaic, and mosaic is really built out of broken glass. Really, that is what a mosaic is. And I've never thought of it that way. I've never thought of it that way, but I will from now on.
Yeah, that's powerful.
That brought tears to my eyes. It was beautiful. I have this real desire to ask you to sing because I did not prepare you for it, so I understand if the answer is no. But I have heard. I have another friend who is also an opera singer and is. I thought I knew music, and I've heard people sing, but it's totally different. And I don't know if is there a favorite opera or aria or something that I know that you have it in the back of your in your back pocket. Is there something that you could possibly sing? Because I love when you said that your mother really figured out that, okay, I see why you're doing this. So, uh, it's okay to say no.
Yeah. I will send you some stuff
Okay, perfect. We
afterwards.
will put it
Yeah,
in.
yeah, yeah.
That's perfect. So after listening to it, we'll add a piece. So, but I couldn't help it.
It's okay.
So yeah, that is really powerful. So let's actually fast forward. So you've taught music, you shared music, you sung, and you really accomplished what you've wanted. You built a career as a singer. And then you shifted back into economics and investment, and now you're managing billions of dollars on behalf of many, many really important entities, and at the same time also trying to understand and explain what is going on day to day. So, can you talk to us more about Anna, the investor, Anna, the economist, and what you're seeing and how you look at things about defying the odds there?
Yeah, so yeah, I guess this is another define the odds moment in a way. I started this job as Chief Investment Officer in March of 2020.
Okay,
And
in the middle of the
We all
pandemic.
know 2020.
oh, that's all I have to
Yes.
say. Um, I often joke and say, don't start a new job as the pandemic is beginning. Because, after 2 days at work, they asked me to go home. Remember, go home for 2 weeks, which turned into months.
Yeah.
Um, how do you manage a team when you're home and everyone's locked up? Um, and the markets are going haywire. I mean, and that wasn't me defying the odds, really. It was our team defying the odds. It was really like humanity defying the odds moment, right? I was just a part of it. So I think that was a defining moment, and more than one way. I mean, clearly a pandemic is a defining moment, but I think we're still living in the wake of the pandemic. Um, the world, and it wasn't just a pandemic. It was also Russia invaded Ukraine, right? And then we have a war in the Middle East, which it seems to have paused. But even if we were to find some kind of a peace treaty and try to get out of it, a lot of truths came out after the invasion, which is, hey, are you really my friend? Who are the friends and who are the foes? China, who are you actually friends with? Can we keep trading here or are you siding with Russia? Hey, India, I thought we were friends, but you're still buying Russian oil in the black market. Like what's going on here? So a lot of truths came out. And I think what happened was after all this globalization happened, where we were like, oh, it's a frictionless society, we can go visit any country we want, and everyone is welcome, to when resources became scarce and we started having trust issues, everybody went inward. My country, my people, I'm going to buy oil for cheap because I've got my people to take care of. Forget Ukraine, forget, United States, forget Europe. The truth sort of came up. So how do we recover from that, even if we find a peace treaty, right? And I mean, we all know trust is broken very quickly, right? And it takes a long time to gain back. So I think that's the world we're living in. And everything sort of trickles down from that because we are a globalized world. We trade, right? From an economic standpoint, how money moves, how goods and services move, it's based on
Hmm.
trust. And so when that is broken, I think there's a lot of supply chain changes that are happening that are actually very, very painful for a lot of companies, people, etc. And then enter the Trump administration.
I was just gonna say.
It throws another wrench, right? And what does the Trump administration come with? It comes with protectionist policies, America First policies, things that actually sort of aggravate this deglobalization trend that we've seen. I think it's a part of that bigger trend, which is odd because he kind of started that back in 2016, right? And it's really coming to fruition here. So tariffs, I know, were a really big topic. As I said at the presentation that you attended, Leo.
Please share a little more about that, because I thought it was such a powerful way of talking about tariffs and putting it in perspective. So this is outside of political lens, right? This is not intended to side with one side or another side, but it's about understanding what are the odds here and what are we playing with, right? What are we playing with? Because we're playing with, based on my understanding, we're playing with matches inside of a tinderbox. So sure, you could play for a while, but right? I don't know if that is a good analogy or not.
No, it is, because we're right in the middle of it. So when I gave that talk, there were threats of tariffs from the campaign trail, but nothing had been announced. I found it very interesting that as I was flying back from Seattle, news came up on my phone that there was going to be tariffs on Canada and China, et cetera, right? That it was actually going to get implemented. And I remember thinking, oh no. And then of course, come Monday and going into the stock market, markets tank, right? And treasury yields fall. Everything is just taking a dive. And then Mexico calls and says, okay, we're kicking the can down the road a month. And that is precisely what I was talking about at the talk, is that this is a tool. It's a dangerous tool. It is a high stakes tool, but it is a tool. And what's on the table for negotiations? It's really fentanyl and immigration, right? It's not even this some weird, beautiful industrial policy that nobody can understand, but Trump is a genius. That's not what this is. This is about the trade, Mexico, fentanyl and immigration. Now, why tariffs? That is something why use tariffs? I will never understand that. That seems to be his favorite tool for one reason or another. But why are tariffs dangerous? Because there's so much at stake. So much of trade is done through Mexico. Mexico and Canada are our two largest partners in trade, international trade. So this is a really
partners and friends. You going back to what you were saying. Because our third largest trading partner is China. So, but the first two are now, and it wasn't like that all the time. You shared it with us that it used to be that China was our first prime partner, and we purposefully shifted into Canada and Mexico.
And Mexico, right?
But now we're threatening our friends and top two trading partners, right?
Yes. So there's a lot at stake here. We did kick the can down the road a month. So we'll see. But another thing that we have to understand is just because tariffs go into effect, it was supposed to go effect midnight on Monday night. It's not like we start collecting tariffs right away. We collect tariffs when things actually come over, right? So we shall see. There's still some room, even if it gets enacted. So there's a lot of delays that we can sort of depend on, but I really would love to not see us go to the 11th hour on these things, because if you're a business owner and you're making stuff in Mexico and bringing it up, or you're making stuff in Canada and bringing it in, how do you plan, right? How do you plan as a business owner if it is really that uncertain and everything is being negotiated in 11th hour? It is not good for us. And the economy, as resilient as we've been, we're not in a really healthy place. The jobs number came in today. It's okay. Kind of missed expectations this week. It could be a tipping point, and that is what's at stake. How do we defy those odds?
How do we define those odds? Especially with this kind of policy. That's my question.
Yeah.
It is. But it's, at the same time, you're bringing up an important point, and that is we need to know the tools we work with.
Hmm.
We need to, right, because there is almost like this sense of the end justifies the means.
Yes.
It, it has been shown again and again that that is not the case.
No, it's never, you can't, the end never justifies the means, right? Because the how is very important. Now, I have thought about why is he using tariffs? Why is he
Hmm.
using something that could be so catastrophic for everybody? And I think it's because, this is my personal opinion, I think it's because he wants it right away. If you say something catastrophic, you're going to get people's attention and you're going to
Hmm.
get commitments right away. So it's really not about, hey, let's all get, ourselves around the table and have a negotiation like, you know, professionals. That's not what he's going for because that takes a long time. He wants it right
Hmm.
away. So that's
Yep.
why I think it's, potentially catastrophic. Um, this has really never been done before. Maybe in the first Trump administration, but it wasn't this dire, right? So um, it's difficult to understand what the odds are, even as a
Mm.
base case, because we're talking about a method that hasn't been used before. And also all of the data that we have right now, and this goes into a different, conversation, but all the data that we have post-pandemic, we can't compare it to pre-pandemic data
Mm.
because so many things have changed.
I
So,
wanna pause you for just a second there,
mhm.
and because I want you to share this insight because it was a completely new insight for me, even as a student of business and a professor of entrepreneurship. I follow the markets, though not as closely as you do. But you mentioned something about this whole idea of inflation, the 2% inflation rate, and the fact is how the past pre-pandemic knowledge doesn't apply to the post-pandemic world, and yet we're still operating on the old model. So, can you share some of that?
Yeah, sure. So let me use inflation as an example, as a vehicle
Okay.
for that, right? So if we go all the way back to 2009, GFC, Great Financial Crisis, we had the hardest time getting inflation even to 2%. I couldn't even make it to 2%. It was the little train that could, right? And the Fed's target was at 2%. Let's get it to 2%. We just want it bouncing around 2%. And over time, it kind of did, but it was very precarious. And the worry then was that if we would go into a deflationary environment, which is not good. Come pandemic, we have this inflationary spike, and we have a war. We have two wars, and wars are by nature inflationary because it causes disruption of trade, right? It causes supply chain issues, and it creates scarcity. So it is by nature inflationary. Post-pandemic world is just different. And the Fed still says we're striving for 2%, right? So something is not quite right in my mind. I think we are living in a different world, and inflation right now seems to be bouncing around, 2.5 to 3%. So the question is the economy, inherently different that we are looking at a natural inflation of about 3%? Or does the Fed want to artificially push inflation down to 2% because they're stuck in the old world, in which case they really, really would have to slow the economy down to do that, in which case that's a lot of pain for a lot of people. And that's where the musician in me comes in, because you can't, you're making policy at the 30,000 foot level. We have 330 million people in the United States, all living different types of lives. When you aggregate all of their choices to one number at the top, you're not going to get a picture of how U.S. economy actually is operating, right? So when you make policy based on that top number, there are going to be people who are really going to hurt. And that's the compassion side it's just hard for me to look at those numbers sometimes.
Yeah, it sounds difficult.
I don't want to be a Fed official.
Yeah, interesting journey, and yeah, I think there is just a bunch of phases that kind of happen throughout our lives that we know are essentially just phases. We are going to get through them. We have to defy the odds through each of those, and continue to see how you show up in each of those phases as well. I think is really important.
Yeah.
Do you let it disrupt you? Do you continue on your path? Do you use it as a tool or a vehicle to help you defy the odds in another way? So yeah, I love just how you kind of explored these different career paths, and just kind of like, I don't know, just seeing what's right for you, finding your passion, and how you try to connect like your passion to your work day. And I think that's really really cool, that you just don't lose sight of that, and you could come back and relate and kind of feel safe there. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. That was awesome.
Yeah. And let's take another break right now for our sponsors. And then when we come back, I am really curious to find out more about your next steps and how that you mentioned something about compassion and economics. And I'm really curious about that. And how do you bring that together? So let's take a quick break, and we will be right back, defying the odds. And we're back. So if you've been listening to now, we're here, we're talking to Anna, and talking about some really interesting topics. One started with her personal life, and then we just had a great discussion about how do we deal with defying the odds in a world where we work with kind of very dangerous tools that actually affect all of us, that are outside of our control, right? Because again, there's a way to define my odds with my thought process and ideas, but when we're talking about 25% tariff on something from China, that's outside of the control of anyone who is immediately
Mm.
affected by it, right? So the people who are affected by it are outside of it. So there's very little theoretically we can do, and there's very little compassion going into that. So it's a really powerful discussion. Like, how do you actually do that? So, Victor.
Right. Yeah. No, I am curious. I'm curious. It is interesting that you have these two diverse backgrounds. You have, this economics background and a music background, and I wanted to dive more into, yeah, just the music background. I know you've mentioned just kind of singing at a young age, but what's been, yeah, how do you defy the odds and just keep going? And what's like the passion that keeps bringing that back to that place of compassion?
Yeah, it's interesting when I started singing, as I said earlier, if I look back, I think it began with a compassion for self, right? Compassion for myself because I needed to find that voice. And as I became a performer, I could see the music changing the audience, right? And so it became compassion for others. And I could see it changing other musicians, right? In the way we talk about music. It is a very, very powerful thing, music. It is a very spiritual thing. It's something I can't even really do justice to as I'm describing it, right? Um, Now, in the world of economics and markets, et cetera, I mean, compassion I think you can find different angles for compassion. Um, Economics, when we talk about it, so, I do a lot of media interviews. They want to know the big numbers, like the unemployment rate, the inflation rate, what the Fed is doing, et cetera, interest rates. These things have impact on real people. It has impact on me. It has impact on you. But we don't talk about it like that. We talk about it as if we're all kind of one American economy that's like clumped together, like a whole bunch of cells or something. Um, And then we talk about the American workforce. Like today, the jobs number came out. We talk about the American labor force as if it's this thing rather than people underneath it. And I think that's what is missing from our public discourse. When we talk about markets and talk about the economy and talk about investors, oftentimes we talk as if you and I are experiencing the same life, as if somebody who has, 10 children and they're, making it work, they have the same experience as somebody who is, a billionaire. Like it's just not the same,
Right.
right? And I think that awareness is the beginning of compassion. I think that awareness is missing, and I think that is what we need to capture. And I mean, it doesn't mean that it
I
has
love
to
it.
come from music, but certainly the sensibilities that are present in the arts and in a lot of people who have connected with other people at different levels. I mean, I think that can be present in all the different ways that we interact with each other, but certainly in the way we talk about the economy and how we all make a living and how we all feed our families and nurture ourselves. I think that's a really important piece.
It really is. And I think the idea is that there is compassion missing in the dialogue, is something that we really need to highlight, because in all of this tariff talk and everything else, we are the administration is not talking about
Yes.
compassion,
Yes.
right? And I love the idea that awareness is the beginning of compassion. That's definitely going to be one of those takeaways of this conversation for me. And it resonates with me truly, more than you can imagine. And I love the fact that when you sing, you had compassion for yourself, then you sing, you saw compassion for others. And now what I hear you're saying is you're trying to bring compassion into a system that lacks compassion as a metric. And I know another one, system, that lacks compassion at its foundation. Victor, will get care to guess what I'm talking about?
Yeah, our broken justice system.
Prisons in particular.
Yeah.
So, so the reason why I think it's kind of important here is because in teaching in Defy Ventures, which is one of our sponsors and someone that an organization that unlocks people's potential by teaching entrepreneurship inside prisons. The secret sauce of the program is that they bring mentors like you and I, into the prison to stand face to face with those who are incarcerated. People like Victor there.
I was one of
And
them.
yeah, he was one of them. And I even have have a little a little handout, right? And then as you could see here's Victor right here, and in on the inside, right? And these are the affirmations that we talked about. We share with each other to get through the hard times, because I would go in there twice a week for 2 hours each time, but then I would leave. They would stay, right? Victor, you would stay there. And then, so how do you keep yourself in this really dark place where compassion is not a metric? How do you keep yourself motivated, right? But then we bring in mentors like you and I, and we mentor them, but we also do these exercises which really transform and create awareness. And with awareness comes compassion. And I will tell you, the first time I went to a Defy event in San Diego, in R.J. Donovan prison, where Mendez brothers were, by the way. But yet I was there at the Supermax, and I thought I already worked in prisons. I already thought I understood what it means to give to those who don't have something. But when I saw the value of bringing in mentors in, and having mentors become aware that they are humans, we are the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
The compassion grew. I saw it, right? It's
Yeah.
one thing to
Yeah.
talk about it in concept, but I think, like, I literally watched it grow and flower, right? And I
Yeah.
think as I'm talking, I'm realizing that's probably what you felt when you sang for others.
Yeah, so that's definitely true. I mean, people would come up to me and, tell me, and they weren't expecting what to hear. It would surprise them, right? Now, I will say also, sometimes when I give these talks on the economy, ironically, and this is where I kind of got the idea of compassion is, when I talk about the K-shaped economy where the haves and have-nots are really bifurcating right now because of the high interest rate environment. At the end of one talk, this lady came up to me and she was in tears. And she said, I've never heard anybody, I go to these talks, but I've never heard anybody talk about something that sounded like my life. And so that's what
Mm.
moved me. And I thought, okay, there needs to be a better relational aspect to how we talk about this thing that we share, this 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 network of commerce where we exchange labor and money and we transact. And we've got to have a better conversation where we recognize that the person on the other end is a human.
Wow.
Yes. Yep, we're all humans at the end of the day. Compassion.
And that's what's missing. That is indeed what's missing in the conversation. And because and our leaders are so isolated, so
Yeah,
outside of the pieces,
they're up here.
right? And they're moving pieces as if they're pawns. And but there is a real outcome. There's a real feel for that, and I don't think it's this administration or any other. I think it's been a common theme throughout the ages where
Yeah.
people and when we do find compassion, then all of a sudden the culture changes. You know, and I love this idea of awareness is the beginning of compassion. Not to be too bleak, but you know, most of my family died in the Holocaust. And, when you think about Germany as a culture, they were the ones, they were the birth of Nazism, right? That's where it happened. And,
Hmm.
but it's also was the birth of all of our powerful desire to help others. The idea of foreign aid and Marshall Plan and everything else really happened there. And the awareness that atrocities happen have transformed the culture for over 70 years, right?
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
affected everybody else. So this awareness is the root. It's not just like, oh, it's all about compassion. Let's just be
Yeah.
friends with each other. That is not the case. The point here is that we got to become aware of the experiences of others who are suffering because of whatever decisions, and that becomes real. And I've seen it firsthand, like you've seen it firsthand, but I've seen it where a Republican representative came to the prison to his graduation, right? You remember that? And
Yep. Yep.
he said, "Listen, I am a state representative," and he said, "Listen, I am a cop in my regular job, right? I go behind in the cop car. I have put people like that here." But he coming here and seeing these men coming through with their caps and gowns, talking about their freedom, talking about their entrepreneurship plans, talking about their goals and how proud they are of what they've accomplished,
Oh,
has changed how he looks at what he does, right? And I've had these experiences again and again inside, right? So for those of you who are listening and like, oh my God, I want to go. Like, I want to go to prison. I never thought
Do it.
I was going to say it, but I want to go to prison. You can. Defy Ventures is one of our sponsors, and you can go to defyventures.org and look it up. I think we're in 10 different states, including Washington State, in over 25 prisons. We have graduated over 5,000 men and women, and over 300 businesses started
Yep.
outside of prison, including one
amazing.
of them being Victory Code,
Let's go.
which is Victor's startup. So this whole thing, awareness, is really important. Awareness and compassion. I really hope that you can actually do what you suggested and bring compassion into economics. And maybe you should write a book about it.
Ding ding.
All right. Well, I want to finish up by thanking you so much for your time. This has been a delightful conversation that spanned like really a lot of topics and touched on some of the really sensitive ones that are touching not just you and I, but pretty much anyone who is listening. So if those of you who are listening, you like this podcast, let us know. Share, like, subscribe, retweet. Victor, what do you got? What are your thoughts about this conversation and going forward?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think it's an amazing journey, Anna. Especially just coming from South Korea, migrating over here. If you talked about defying the definition of defying the odds at the beginning, and just kind of part of it was probability, and just if you think about the probability of going from where you started as a child to where you are today. Probably wouldn't have ever guessed it growing up. So yeah, just kudos to you for your amazing journey. Really appreciate you sharing with our listeners some helpful advice. And I think the key point I had was just the compassion. I think that's one of the biggest things that we see that's missing in our society, and where a lot of this can stem from. So I do appreciate your insights.
Thank you for having me. I had a great time.
For sure.
I hope to have you on again. One of our goals is to build master classes based on the insights and inputs from our guests, and hopefully the guests being part of the curriculum. And I think your the curriculum on building compassion in business is really striking.
Thank
So
you.
thank you. All right, everybody. Hopefully, Anna, do you have any parting thoughts? And
You know, um, Maybe if I can bring it all the way around, right? Earlier in the podcast, I said that suffering and vulnerability is really important, right? And tying it to compassion, I think that if we can welcome suffering into our lives, meaning, well, I don't want to like invite it in, but if it happens to us, to be mindful of what is happening, learning from it, getting through it, getting stronger from it, those experiences actually help us to step into other people's suffering.
Mm.
And that I think is also what helps us to be compassionate. So, tying the end of compassion, that's the end, how we ended, but going back to the very beginning of, just facing the challenges and going through suffering. I think they actually go together. So let's not wish away challenges or any suffering. Let's look at it as opportunities, not only to become stronger, but to be able to identify with our fellow human beings.
Love it.
wow. All right, we're gonna leave on that note. Please stay. We'll talk to you in just a second, but we're gonna take you off stage.
Hey, hey.
Hey, Victor. It gets better and better, right? It's just the best.
Yeah. Now I appreciate you, being able to bring these some of these guests on the platform. Anna, she had an amazing story. I was, particularly resonated with her because Lorena, she's part South Korean as well, and just wanted to kind of just see like her upbringing and some of like how she got to where she was, and not kind of she was like what first generation immigrant, and just being able to kind of like explore life how she wanted to. She didn't use that as an excuse, but was still able to kind of hone in on her passion, which was music, and she always just found just like, I don't know, a safe place in that. And I do think that was cool, because we do have to find our passions and what brings us comfort. And I mean, she also introduced a whole new world to me of economics. I see that you have a lot more knowledge on it than me. So part of the conversation was interesting. But yeah, how about you, Leo?
For me, what really stuck out for me, one is just how much I identify with her as a refugee
For sure.
from the Soviet Union and coming to this country. And this idea of following your dreams. I was supposed to be a doctor, and instead I, became an entrepreneur. And not only that, but now I teach entrepreneurship in prisons. I had that conversation with my mom, almost identical to hers. So
That's right. That's right.
it was quite, it was like, why did we come to this country so you can go to prison? What's going on? So, but this idea of compassion and bringing compassion, and that awareness is at the beginning, of compassion, is something that I'm gonna I'm gonna take with me, as well as so many other takeaways. So, all right, for everyone here, if you found this interesting, if you found this fascinating, please let us know in the comments. Please share and subscribe. And we are going to be starting new opportunities, talking about it in the months ahead. Please keep up with us. And in the meantime,
Keep defying
let's
the
keep
odds.
defying the odds.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Defying the Odds.
We hope you found inspiration, insight, and maybe a new way of looking at the challenges in your own life.
Remember, defying the odds is a mindset, and you have what it takes to overcome anything.
If you enjoyed this episode, please like, share, and subscribe.
Until next time, keep pushing forward, stay resilient, and never stop defying the odds.